We're going to do a practice of working with the inner critic through an inner nurturing committee. And as you're getting settled in your body and your breath, notice what's coming up. Notice if you could let your body settle and relax. The inner critic is something that causes a lot of tension, usually contraction. We're basically being bullied by some part of ourselves. So, the first thing that you might want to do is think about where you might like your inner nurturing committee to meet. A place at a lake or along a river, at the ocean, maybe in a beautiful garden, or maybe in your heart center. So, bring to mind some place that would be nurturing and that would feel safe. Stay really connected with your body. Take a few deep breaths. Notice the aromas, maybe the sound of the forest. There might be sounds of birds. Notice what it feels like to be in this safe, protected place. And let your body relax. Notice your breath. Keep attending to your breath throughout the practice. Let your breath soothe and settle you. And then think about who you might like to invite into this space with you to be part of this inner nurturing committee. And some of us are lucky to have that in our daily life as well. And maybe there's one or two people from there, but we don't have to limit ourselves to that. So it could be an elder, maybe a grandparent or a teacher, a friend. It could be your wise older self. If in 10 years you're pretty much healed of the trauma and the inner critic has calmed, it's not bothering you anymore, you're feeling a lot better. Sometimes our wise older self can come back and give us some support, some love. It could be a spiritual leader or a teacher, it could be Jesus, a saint, meditation teacher, guardian angel. Who would you like to invite to be part of your inner nurturing circle? And if you have a beloved pet, a dog, a horse, either that's still alive or that was from the past, you could bring them into. And let everybody sit in kind of a semicircle, however they're arranged in your safe, nurturing space. And let yourself be really aware of them. Use all of your senses, your sight, hearing, any aromas in the space, the textures, your sense of touch. And these people, these supports are here to help us stay stable, to help us remember that an inner critic is something that is difficult and troubling, but it's not an enemy necessarily. It's usually some part of ourselves that figures it has a job to keep us safe or to protect us from harm. And it sounds really vicious, and often it uses shaming and contempt. And so, as we're doing the practice, we're going to invite the inner critic into the circle and see if we could know more about what's going on with it. And you might have a visual of it, you might not. It's fine either way. Let's take a few minutes. We have lots of time for this. We could just kind of settle in, notice the body and the breath. Notice all of the people that you've invited in, or the beings that you've invited in to be part of your committee. These are people who are wise, who will tell you the truth, help you to see the truth, and be unconditionally loving and accepting. And bring to mind something that the inner critic has said. You're stupid. You're never on time. You're a fraud. It might be something from 5 minutes ago or something that's kind of persisted over time. Let yourself hear the words. If you like, you could look at them as well, as though they're written up on the wall across from you or in your mind's eye. And as you invite in the inner critic, you might say something like, I'm here, I'm listening to you, I want to get to know you better, and I'm not going to allow you to shame me anymore. You can't speak to me with contempt. I want to know what's going on. I'm listening. And I'm not going to listen to your lies and to your contempt and to your ridicule and to you being mean. And that doesn't mean I'm going to push you away. It just means that we need to figure out a way to have a better interaction. And notice what the inner critic is trying to get your attention about. And then look for the evidence. So if the inner critic is saying, well, you're going to be busted at work, you're a fraud, you don't know what you're doing, they're going to find out and they're going to fire you. One of the things we might ask is, well, what's your evidence for that? How do you know that I'm a fraud at work? How do you know that I'm going to be found out and fired? What's your thinking process here? What's your evidence? And often we'll find that there's some incident from the past that it's based this judgment on, and then it's projecting into the present time. So maybe there was a time when you didn't feel up to doing your job, where you didn't feel like you had all the skills. And it's taking that memory of how you felt overwhelmed, and maybe you were exaggerating how well you could do to get a job. And it's taking that and turning it into some present moment judgment about your ability at work. We also have to be careful that we're not the target of a perfectionism attack. So notice what are the words, what is the feeling? And then look to see, what's the truth in it? Is this accusation true? So maybe it was true in the past that you didn't have the skills to do a job. Maybe you actually had what would be normally expected as the skills, but then this perfectionism thing came in and started noticing every little mistake or shaming you for every time you said something awkwardly. So we need to be careful that we're not the target of that perfectionist. So tune back into your body and your breath and notice that there might have been some truth to that. There certainly was maybe a feeling of you didn't have the skills, or you might be targeted somehow or fired or disciplined for not knowing how to do your job. And then this critic has taken that into the present moment and said, well, look what happened before. And then we project that into what might happen now. And it might not be accurate at all. Let's take a few minutes here to notice that. What's going on? Is there a fear or an anxiety that something might be going on, that you might be feeling overwhelmed at work and somebody might find out? Or what's the actual truth of the situation? And use some of these beings on your committee to help you with that. What would a reasonable person, if they knew the whole situation, what would they say? What would they advise you to do? And sometimes we might find that we're out of alignment, either with the past example or in the present. And that's part of the benefit of having this critic to bring forward things. Or sometimes we might notice that we've gotten into a situation where we do feel a bit overwhelmed, and it might have nothing to do with work. It might be more stuff around our personal life, or it might be the actual job. We might need to take some steps. But one thing that we always know is that shaming ourselves and that voice of contempt, that meanness, is never going to help. So as you're sitting with this and noticing what the truth might be, really let your committee support you and love you. Really feel that, soak that in. You're not alone with this. And especially if you feel like you are out of alignment somehow, let the other people in the committee support you with that. Just because we're out of alignment doesn't mean that we're a horrible person, that we're unworthy or a write off. It just means that maybe we've slipped and we need to realign. And having this loving support might be very helpful. There's a behavior that we might need to change. We don't need to feel like that's the whole of who we are. It's just a behavior. See if you could let yourself feel that. And more often, it's just an inner critic attack, it's a shame attack. And in fact, we're not out of alignment. There isn't a big corrective action that we need to take. And when we have that calmer, wiser perspective of someone on the committee to help us to see what is the truth here. Is it in fact a perfection attack and there's actually nothing wrong with what I do at work? This isn't actually true. It's something from the past and it's not true. And you're sitting here with these beings, these people, this divine support to help you really see and to feel and to accept that you're okay just as you are. And let yourself really take that in. Let yourself marinate in that love and compassion and kindness. Even when we've made a mistake, it doesn't mean that we have to cut ourselves off and slink away. We're still worthy of being here with this support, of being kind and compassionate with ourselves, being connected with ourselves. Let your shoulders soften, let your breath deepen, let yourself relax. And what's your sense of what's driving the inner critic? Most often it's fear of being hurt, fear of being rejected or judged. And somehow it turns into this kind of meanness inside. And what is it that could help? Part of it is to say to the inner critic, no, you don't get to talk to me like that. There's just no reason for that. I'm not going to listen to that kind of talk. We need to figure out a way to make this work together. I'll listen. And if this is a strategy from the past to keep me safe, I'll acknowledge that that was helpful at one time. And you don't have to do it all this time. I'm here, I'm an adult. We have support. It's okay to let go. I'm strong and resilient, and I'm building that all the time. I have agency. I have the capacity to see the truth and to accept the truth, to make changes where I need to, and not to berate myself when it's not applicable. It's okay now to stand down. Notice a felt sense of safety. Look around the circle. Notice who's here, who loves you and supports you. And soak that in. Notice it with your eyes, your sense of sight, the touch and the textures, the sounds, the smells. Notice what it feels like to be sitting here, absorbing the love and support from your inner nurturing committee. And know that you can bring that back anytime you want. And notice that there might be a willingness to let the inner critic heal and to stand back and not be so critical. To remind yourself that it's done its job and it's not necessary anymore. It's not helpful at all. And ask it to find nicer ways of letting you know when there's a concern or a fear. It doesn't have to work against you. It's welcome to be in the circle. And feel what it feels like in your body right now. Feel your heart center. Notice what it feels like to be loved and supported. To know that you're not alone. Let your body soften. Let your breath be smooth. It's safe to let this go.